Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. Now, avant-garde jazz, avant-garde music in general, free jazz, these are labels that tend to frighten the innocent, but not in a sort of Halloween slasher or Jeffrey Epstein sort of way, but in the sense that people hear these labels and they think, right, I'm about to hear a style of music that's unapproachable, that's unmelodic or even anti-melodic. And in some cases, people would be right. But with Keith Tippett, one of my favorite pianists ever, you would be wrong. By the way, I do have a top. There is a top of my skull, but Zoom is cutting it off. But no matter, just to assure people watching that there is, in fact, something wrong with their television and it does need to be adjusted. I'm just not the man to adjust it. Anyway. Keith Tippett was interesting because he was an incredibly versatile avant-garde player, but he could also be very lush and melodic. He could improvise within a traditional jazz setting. He could retain his quintessential unique sound, which after listening to even a little bit of his music, I think most of you could clock in straight away. He could maintain that even playing in rock settings. For instance, he played a lot. I mean, they're certainly not a traditional rock band, but prog rock band. He played on three major King Crimson albums, Lizard Islands, and before that, before those in the wake of Poseidon. And again, the playing on that is much like the playing on a lot of his solo albums. It veers between the harmonic and lush and the sort of biting and dissonant. It's very soulful, but at the same time, very much sort of avant-garde European. Two things that seem to be, like salt on ice cream, but it works. He's able to sort of ride both of those bucking broncos at once. And his solo albums are really interesting. Some are more accessible than others. I would say that his early 1970s albums with his Keith Tippett group are probably his most accessible, starting with You Are Here, I Am There, and another one that was really excellent from the following year, 71, dedicated to you, but you weren't listening. He formed another group in the 80s called Musician, which again, very avant-garde, but still very soulful at times. And again, deeply engaging. He played a lot with Elton Dean, the great sort of avant-garde and jazz saxophonist in the original version of Soft Machine. So many interesting things. By the way, did I say 80s? Musician was in the 90s. And he had a very long career. He was married to the great Julie Driscoll, who was the original vocalist in Brian Auger's Trinity, and they performed together a lot. He was with a group, or he played with a group called Company in the 80s. Really weird and wild stuff, as Johnny Carson might say. And he was someone who really collaborated with so many interesting musicians, whether the incredibly obscure to the quite famous. I mean, there was a great sort of modern big band that he led in the beginning of the 70s. Well, not necessarily, he didn't lead it, but he was, no, he did lead it, actually. He did. I'm just having one of those Joe Biden days. I think we're all allowed to have those sometimes. So it was produced by Robert Fripp, again, of King Crimson, but the musical director was Keith Tippett. And it was a wonderful big band. Ian MacDonald, another name from King Crimson, and everyone else was part of it. So was Elton Dean. Ian Carr of the great fusion band Nucleus was part of it too. Carl Jenkins, Nucleus, his own work, and later on Soft Machine as well. John Marshall, who played with everyone, including those groups, was there. Robert Wyatt, so much. Julie Driscoll was there. Roy Babington, basically anyone who was part of this so-called Canterbury scene, as well as sort of the English and Western European jazz scenes of this era, played on this Septober Energy. And again, really cool, really interesting album. But check out the You Are Here, I Am There album by the Keith Tippett Group. Again, it's wonderfully avant-garde, but at the same time soulful and surprisingly accessible. So definitely check that out. And as always, like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.